All right, welcome to our presentation here on atoms. So atoms are the basic building blocks of matter, all the physical stuff that exists around us. The image here has atoms depicted as these colorful spheres, and each color represents a different element, an atom of a different element. These different atoms combine to make compounds, and these compounds are what exist all around us. Compounds such as the DNA shown here. It's a strand of DNA, and we see all these atoms combined in different ways to make the compound DNA. Atoms are comprised of three subatomic particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Atoms also have two distinct regions. There are two parts to an atom. There's the nucleus, which is the central part of the atom, the very middle, the core. And there is the electron cloud, which is all the area that surrounds the nucleus. Now, most of an atom is made up of the electron cloud. The area that surrounds the nucleus is the vast majority of an atom. I've heard the analogy that if the atom was the size of a football field, the nucleus would be a marble at the middle of the field, and the rest of the field would be the electron cloud. So most of the atom is the electron cloud. These depictions we're looking at of atoms are very much not to scale. The nucleus should be quite a bit smaller. All right, let's take a closer look at protons, one of the subatomic particles. They have a mass of 1, a charge of +1, and the protons exist or live in the nucleus of the atom. Protons determine which element the atom belongs to. So any atom that has 1 proton is an atom of the element hydrogen. Any atom that has 2 protons is an atom of the element helium. 3 protons, and you have an atom of the element lithium. If you've ever seen a periodic table, you've seen that there are 118 elements on the periodic table. And again, those numbers, 1 through 18, are telling us how many protons exist in atoms of that element. So although I just said there's 118 elements on the periodic table, only 92 of them are naturally occurring. Of those 92, only 25 are essential for life, so life gets along without most of the elements. And of those 25, there are what's known as the Big Four: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and they make up about 96% of life by mass. So those 4 elements are really the very biggest 4 elements when it comes to life. All right, our next subatomic particle are neutrons. Neutrons have a mass of 1, a charge of 0. That's why they're called neutrons, because they are neutrally or 0 net charge. And they exist in the nucleus of an atom, the center part. They're in there with the protons. In fact, it's kind of their job to make sure that the protons stay spaced out. Protons are all positively charged. If you've ever tried to play with magnets and you've ever tried to put 2 of the same charge of the magnet together, you know that they repel one another, they push away. And the same thing would happen in the nucleus of the atom if we had nothing but protons. They would push away, and the nucleus of the atom would just kind of break apart, and you'd not have an atom at all. But luckily, we do have an atom, we do have a nucleus, and that's largely because these neutrons stay in there and help space the positively charged protons apart. The third of the subatomic particles then are electrons. These particles have a mass of 0, a charge of -1, and they exist in the electron cloud. So they are what surrounds the nucleus. A very important note here: all atoms have an equal number of protons and electrons. So keep in mind, protons have a +1 charge, electrons have a -1 charge. This means that all atoms are neutrally charged. They have no overall positive or negative charge. Their positives cancel out their negative charge. That isn't to say that we can't have positively or negatively charged species. We do. When an atom gains or loses an electron, it's called an ion, and it does have a charge. It lost that neutral charge. So just kind of a distinction of in terms, atoms all have zero charge. Once an atom loses or gains an electron, though, it's not called an atom anymore. It's now called an ion. We have two types of ions depending on whether the atom gained or lost the electron. So when an atom loses an electron, so there's an electron, it comes off of this atom, it now has a positive charge because it has more protons than electrons. 11 protons, only 10 electrons. That means we have one more positive charge, so we have an overall charge of +1. This is what's known as a cation. So positively charged ions are cations. And on the flip side of that, when an atom gains an electron, so we see that electron coming onto an atom, this atom now has an additional electron, so 17 protons, 11 electrons. This is an ion with a -1 charge. So chlorine has become chloride. When an atom gains an electron, it now has a -1 charge. It now has more negatives than protons, and we call it an anion. So cations and anions. Today, we should have learned this list of terms and these concepts. If you're taking a look at this screen and you're not quite remembering some of these terms or some of these concepts, it might be helpful for you to kind of go back and review. Perhaps you missed something during the lecture. That'll do it for today. We'll see you again tomorrow with a new lesson.